Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I am here with my 1960 XK Falcon, which is in impeccable condition, and we are going to be doing a little bit of brake work to this vehicle today. Now I'm just going to show you under the hood, and it is a hood folks, because up here, as we can see on the original sticker from 1960, it says hood rod, not bonnet. So previously I've put a brand new master cylinder in this vehicle, and so today what we're going to be doing is we're going to replace the brake lines and the wheel cylinders in the wheels so that the braking system on this vehicle is 100%. So as you can see, I've got all new rubber hoses, 3 new rubber hoses. There's 2 for the front and 1 for the rear, and new clips for those hoses. And then over here I've got all new wheel cylinders to go in the drum brakes of this vehicle, and absolutely brand new. So when we fit these, we'll have the braking system, like I said, 100%, so that we can drive this old vehicle, this 60-year-old vehicle now, with confidence. Alright, so as you can see folks, as opposed to using the hoist, I've got the car up on axle stands safely all the way around, so we can really work on the car, get all the brake components done. You can see, because of the increments of the front axle stands, had to use just a small few pieces of wood just to raise that up, but we've got the car up. So now let's get the wheels off and let's get stuck into this. Now folks, unlike modern vehicles where you can just remove the discs quite easily, with these old drum brakes you have to remove the dust cover for the bearing and the complete assembly to get that hub off. Alright folks, so it feels like the shoes are grabbing the drum, stopping it coming off. So I'm just going to pop this cover off here and back off the slack adjuster on the shoes so I can get the drum off easily without damaging the drums or the drum shoes. Alright, so now we've got that cover off, shine in there with the camera, you can see the slack adjuster, and what you've got to do is you've got to get a flat screwdriver and just spin that wheel. Alright, so I can feel that slack adjuster's gone loose now, so let's see if we can get the drum off. Oh yeah, we can see that by backing that slack adjuster off, the drum is just easily sliding off. And there we go. So as I mentioned, we're also going to replace these old brake lines. So I'm going to remove the brake line right now as well. And with the brake lines, I actually got a bunch of new clips. Not sure if they'll be identical, but let's see. Oh yeah, very similar. So what I'm doing here is just undoing that brake line from the inside of that cylinder. And there we go, we've got it all, got the brake line completely off. To be honest, having seen this job now, so glad that I'm replacing the brake lines as well, because it looks like you would have had to have taken the brake line off just to get the wheel cylinder off anyway. So whilst you're in there, look at that. I mean, that's got to be a 60-year-old brake line, got to be replaced. So the brake line completely off, now we have to get the actual cylinder out, and there's just these 2 nuts, 2 bolts I should say, a 7/16 bolts to get out. There you go, that little wheel cylinder removes quite easily. Use our 7/16 spanner to do up those studs. There you go, as you can see we've got the new brake line installed on the new wheel cylinder. And as you can see, I have installed the new copper washer that they provided with the new brake lines. So now that we've got the new brake line installed on the new wheel cylinder, just a matter of reinstalling this bracket and installing the brake line. And of course the final thing to do is to get these two springs back in. And then with that drum back on, what we now need to do is to adjust that slack adjuster again, to take up the slack in the shoes so that the brakes are firm. And once that slack adjuster's adjusted, just so that you can feel that the brake shoes are just touching the drum, then we put the cap back in. So now that we've swapped the wheel cylinder and the brake line on that wheel, what I'm going to do is I've got some new brake fluid here, some .3 brake fluid. I'm going to suck the old brake fluid out of the reservoir, put new brake fluid in, because it's probably time we change the brake fluid anyway, and then we will bleed that front left wheel. So I've got a syringe here to suck that out. So now that we've put the new brake line and wheel cylinder in, and we've swapped the fluid over for new fluid in the reservoir, now we're just going to bleed the brakes to get the air out of the front left system. So I've got a hose on the outlet, I've got a 5/16 spanner, and what I'm going to do is I've got my son in the car, and when I tell him he's going to push the brake pedal down, so what we do is we just open the relief here, like that, and then down with the pedal, and up, and down with the pedal, and up, and down, and up, and down, and up, and down, and up. All right, looks good. All right, so that appears to have got all of the air out of the line. So we'll just pop this off, and then we will put the little rubber boot on that came with the new wheel cylinder. So now that we've got the new wheel cylinder, the new brake line, the hub back on, and we've bled the front left, I'm going to chuck the wheel back on, and then we'll move on to the front right wheel. So as you can see, I've now done the front right. We've got the new brake line on. We've now got the new wheel cylinder on, and I've just adjusted the slack adjuster on the drum brakes to bring the shoes out onto the drum. So we've got it now just touching the drum. That's perfect. So we'll get the wheel back on, and then we'll move on to the rear axle. So I've just jumped under the rear end of the car, and I just want to show you that the rear end is slightly different. We have solid brake lines, that run along the diff all the way up to that slave cylinder, and they go straight in. The rear right and the rear left slave cylinders are identical, with the connection coming straight out. So on the rear end there is just one flexible hose that comes from here through to the hard lines on the top of the differential. So I've got a new one to replace that, because that's going to be 60 years old as well, probably never been replaced. So we'll get that off first, and then we'll do the wheel cylinders. Now folks, something that I noticed is that the fittings are slightly different. It didn't seem to make a difference for the front. However, on the rear, what I found was that when I inserted the new brake line, it was just protruding too much for the clip to hold it in place. So I've had to make this little shim. I just made it out of a little piece of sheet metal, and I'm just going to insert that. So you can see I'm just inserting that little shim that I made just before I insert the brake line, and that still has just a perfect amount of protrusion now to get the clip on, so that we've got the brake line securely mounted. So you can see there the rear brake line now fully mounted up, and the brake line is fastened. I've got that shim that I had to make in there, and then the new retaining clip goes on really firmly in there, as you can see. So we're all connected up now, and we'll get on to the drum brakes, putting the new wheel cylinders in the rear drums of this vehicle. So as you can see, the rear drum brake is slightly different to the front. You can see that we took the rear drum off, and we didn't have to take the bearing off like we did the front. And then also with the rear cylinder, it's a little bit more tight to get it out. Don't really want to disassemble the whole shoe. I've just taken this little bleeder valve out the back of the cylinder, and let's see if we can wiggle now the cylinder out. There we go. And once again, just comparing the new ones I've got to the old ones, the original ones, and they look identical. So just going to pop that little bleeder valve out, and we'll insert it the same way. So as you can see, we managed to get that new wheel cylinder in there without disassembling all of the brake shoes, which is awesome. And now it's just a matter of popping the brake shoes back into position there and putting the retaining springs in. Got this adjuster, this self-adjusting tensioner in here, so that needs to be popped back into place as well. So that's the rear right done. You noticed I had to adjust the slackner up quite a fair bit to get that close to the shoes to the drum. So now we'll move on to the rear left. So that's it, folks. That's all of the brake lines changed and all 4 wheel cylinders changed. You saw with this last one, when I was reassembling that slack adjuster was completely in the minimum position. So there's really effectively no rear left braking. So I've adjusted that right up, so it's just touching the drum. You saw I was being quite pedantic there at the end. And it now should have really good braking capacity. So now it's just to bleed all 4 wheels. I've already done the front left, but I'll do the rest and then the front left again, just in case there's any air in there, and then we'll take it for a test drive. Down. and up, down, and up. And folks, just check out the disgusting looking brake fluid that has come out of this vehicle. I'm going to say it's got to be probably maybe 10-year-old brake fluid. Look at the colour by comparison to the absolute clear fluid that went into the vehicle. So that's it, folks. I've got the Falcon off the jack stands now, and it's now time to take it for a test drive. Let's see how the Falcon performs now that we've got all new wheel cylinders and brake lines and a complete flush with new brake fluid. Well, that's pretty solid, isn't it? So it's the first test drive with the new brakes. Got the new wheel cylinders and the new brake lines in, and let's go for a pull up. So it's the first test drive with the new brakes. Got the new wheel cylinders and the new brake lines in, and let's go for a pull up. I reckon that's at least 100% better than it was before. Pretty impressed. So that's it, folks. The brakes are done on the Falcon. I've taken it for a test drive and the brakes are performing really well. I've replaced those wheel cylinders and the brake hoses, and the brakes are just now superior to anything that they've ever been on this vehicle for me. If you've enjoyed this video, do feel free to like, share and subscribe to the channel. In the future, I'm going to be doing more work on this Falcon. I've got a new water pump to fit, so if you'd like to see that, do hit the bell notifications to see that update come in the future. Until then, have a good night.